Hi everyone, this is Nagin Ansari from Backspace. I have with me today Bilal Hameed, who has joined us on a very interesting session for Mics On, which is a virtual summit we're doing. We're going to have a bunch of conversations, but Bilal is here because he's been associated with academics in Pakistan for how many years now, Bilal?
About 18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
He has been the former dean at Cedar College. He is currently heading the school, Cedar School. He is one of the founders at the Ivy School. He has a little passion project called Qadam, and he runs Alt Academy, which is another very interesting thing we're going to talk about in this session. So, Bilal, nowadays
Yeah.
we're under lockdown,
Yeah.
and I'll get straight to it. Um, this one of the pillars of Mike's on is the fact that mindset, the M from Mike's on, mindset is a
Yeah.
very major part of how people are responding in this crisis. And social distancing is happening, and there's one lockdown now, there may be more in the coming future, maybe even at the
Mm.
end of the year, some are saying. What can schools do to ensure that there is no loss of learning, or they can minimize the loss of learning? And this you can tell me in answer in any sort of category you wish, of course, not speaking for schools in the world or in Pakistan, but whatever you understand best.
Okay. Thank you. I think because I've been dealing with mostly private schools, so the private school answers would be better suited to give. Uh, Now the question is a quite a heavy one, because the problem is with private schools is that what we consider learning and what we have to prove to parents is learning sometimes become two different things. Now, in this crazy times, a lot of parents are also questioning what schools are and what because their mindset is that learning can only take place when the teacher is in front of the classroom delivering a lecture, and that has to change for us to really talk about true learning, because there are consequences of while we just pander to the idea of, okay, the teacher has to be present to take a class. Now what's happening is, because we that's the method that we all accept, the teacher has to lead the class. When this pandemic has started, is that what everybody was doing first in school, they have just now moved the whole thing on Zoom or other platforms like Skype or Google Hangouts, and it's a teacher led model where the teacher continues teaching and the students at home log in. Now the problem with that is that it doesn't always work on a distance learning platform because of the age differences involved. Now, there are multiple problems. First, understanding what are we trying to achieve. Now, if we just want, because what schools end up doing is just to play safe, because what is happening is there's a whole mafia of parents trying to figure out the claiming the schools are a mafia. Now, obviously, the schools know better how to deal with learning and how to impart it. But what's happening is that we have to, and schools really, I see it have to, is that they have to deliver the education in a way the parents feel education ho rahi hai. And that becomes a problem, because when you do that, then you have to put the teacher at the center of instruction. And when you're in a classroom environment in school, when there's no distraction from the outside world, where you can discipline a child, scold him or put him in a corner or this or that, you can get kids to listen to you or behave and comply. But when you are at home, the teaching has to be much more encouraging, has to excite the child for him to want to do this. And it can't come from a teacher instructor led lecture based model. So the first thing we have to do is understand that it requires us to deliver education in these distant times differently. But then I think that's an opportunity to us for us to even rethink, is this idea of putting teachers at the center of instruction always the best thing? Because it doesn't, I mean, you take the teacher out of the equation, should the learning stop? I believe that parents don't instruct a child at home, but till the ages of 6, most children are learning only from their parents. That's also learning. So we have to, I think the mindset has to change, both for parents and for schools, that instruction does not have to be teacher led. It's okay if it's, I mean, there are multiple scenarios we can look at, but there's also, uh, you can also use online LMSs, you can use online video content that's already out there. And the teacher can play a role more of a mentor, more of a guide, somebody who checks in more often with each individual child than just to sit in front of a camera and just repeat a lecture. Now, the problem is also that when we say, how do we, uh, future proof education for the next 6 months, or make sure that education or learning is not disrupted, is that for school going children, even the age group is so vast. I mean, schools start at the age of 3 or 2 all the way to A levels, and we want the same solution across the board for all schools. Even in the same school, it won't work for each and every kid, because there are different varying groups, ways of instructing children at the age of 18 versus 16 versus 14 versus 11 versus 6 versus 3. You can apply
Mm.
the same method, but because everybody has been pushed into this, okay, right now let's do this. And I know the schools are trying very hard. Schools are looking at new online LMSs, new ways to connect with their students. Everybody's signed up with Zoom or other platforms like that. And but the problem is that that's just the tools. You can't, if you are going to think that online education will be the same as what you're going to be doing in school, then obviously after a few months you will see all the cracks in the system, because it's not meant to be that way. You
Mm.
understand that taking your actual teaching online is not going to work, so there has to be a difference. And but then there's also a difference for each group, each age group, that has to change. So, and so I mean there is a lot that, as parents we have to think about, as students we have to think about, as teachers we have to think about, and change our mindset about what is true learning. Because honestly speaking, I know for a fact that if I can give my 6-year-old an iPad with IXL, for example, which has which she has to do the exercises, there is much more learning happening there than she connecting with a Zoom call with her teachers from school, and the teachers going off with 20 kids, and those 20 kids have to be managed by their parents at home, and that creates frustration. It can't happen like that. You've got to be, so everybody's got to start thinking about the teacher not being at the center of education, the child being. So things that one can do is, and parents have to be open to the idea that this is also learning. They have to understand that it cannot just be a teacher lecturing that's learning. uh, Learning types could be like you could assign projects for kids to do at home and assess them. You could assign content, video content, to be watched and discussed one-on-one with the teacher. You don't even don't have to do it in a group setting, because you're
Mm.
all online. You can literally set up a 10-minute one-on-one session for every child in your class, and that'll take, if you have 20 kids in a class, that'll take 200 minutes, still less
Mm.
time, like about 3.5 hours, 4 hours a day.
Mm.
That's, I mean, and you can even do it over multiple days, so it's not difficult. You got to be more creative in using online connections like chats and other platforms to keep in touch with the children. So you can have project based learning. You should be now looking at individualized learning plans for students, so that every kid knows what, because in a class you take, every kid goes in the same pace. Right now, sitting at home, we don't have to make sure every kid goes at the same pace. Every child can have their own pace. So schools have to
Absolutely.
start thinking about that, because that is the future. Because currently, I mean, if you think about it, you and I both went to school about 20 or at least 20 odd years ago. And outside of using projectors and iPads, there is no difference in how education is done the last 30 years. While you tell me right now, are you and I working the same way people 30 years ago were working? No, they're working from home. Right, if this would happen 30 years ago, work would actually have stopped. So a lot of things have changed, but education is exactly the same, because it just seems like it's in everybody's interest to perpetuate the same model going forward. Nobody wants to take the first step. But I'm from the system. I'm a teacher for the last 20 years. The system is broke. The system doesn't work. Because if first we say we want to make kids excited about their own learning, we want them to take ownership of their learning, but then we tell them, but this is what you study. You put them in exams, you put them in subjects, you put them in, like, we don't get them a choice. So I mean, this might sound crazy, but I think this time is a perfectly great time to revolutionize education instead of just evolving it. Because you know what, it's obvious that the way we think education is done is broken. So that's why the mindset change has to happen for both parents, students, and teachers. Like, I know these are my kids because they'll tell me that, some of these kids will want a live class versus a recorded class, where I would say that, you can have a recorded class, plus I'm there for you for all your problems. That might be a more better way of learning, but because we stuck to one model, we will go with that. And it's not just recording is just one idea that one can use, but there is so much more. I mean, a teacher's role is actually to be a mentor and and also you can be a curator of the of content. So I think going forward, I think we should really think about, just like how the content creation industry, how the media industry, how the photography industry all have revolutionized and has, in fact, has in a way democratized it. Because right now,
Yeah.
me and you sitting right now, we can conduct this summit at the cost of almost nothing. While earlier, you'd have to be a big production house to record videos, to get two people to talk live, record. Right now, what do we do to get on this call? Zoom, a
Yeah.
mic,
Yeah.
that's it. Like a few thousand rupees. Hit click, record. So I mean, so because other areas already democratized, we and so many people can have access. So I think what we realize is that this monopoly on knowledge has to change. And you know, when we say education has multiple areas. There's the learning, there is access to knowledge, there is problem solving. So I mean, you and already current scenarios, maybe we've already seen communication has been taken over by Google and Hangouts and Zoom and chats and Slack. Google and Wikipedia and Wolfram Alpha have democratized knowledge. It's all right there. You can just Google it, right? So, and you got
Mm.
the whole learning process, or what you call it, degree collection. I mean, you got Coursera and all that stuff. My problem is that currently our education is not really doing much than just giving out degrees to students, and those degrees are just a signal to the employers that this kid is supposedly more hardworking than the other one, so you should hire him. Most people who go to the real world have not learned much skills that they can take onto the work. At least they've not learned the skills from being taught in a classroom. Those skills that they've learned come from outside. So I think we need to really reimagine what education's purpose is supposed to be. And does it have to be a teacher led in a classroom model? And I think this pandemic, if it stretches for a longer period of time, it's going to make us question it even more. Because a couple of months break we can all live with, but 6 months down the road, schools will change, will modify, but parents will have to start thinking also that how can they, what do they want from education? Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot to absorb, and
Yeah.
that's a number of things you've said in there. But I think if I sum it up in a bit of a a philosophical way, it's about the fact that we are not innovating something we already have. We are probably creating it from scratch, and we're asking everybody to join that process. It's not just the educators; even parents have to come on board with the idea.
Yeah, so there has to be mindset
And
change.
another,
Sorry, there has to be mindset change for true innovation to happen. Right now we're not
true.
innovating. All we're doing is we're digitizing the old way of learning. That's not
Yeah.
innovation enough. It's not innovation enough. So,
Mm.
but we can only innovate.
Bilal, do you think
Yeah.
that this has something to do with the fact, Bilal, do you think that this has something to do with the fact that in every other field, all in every other industry, the innovations that happen or that are adapted um, are done by so-called like adults, right? We are responsible for us having a summit on Zoom, so I don't need my parent to decide for me. But
Yeah.
education, like you said, the learning process, if you ask my 10-year-old son if he wants to learn a certain thing or a certain way, nobody really cares about his opinion.
Yeah.
I
Sadly.
decide for him, I
Yeah.
decide for him. So maybe it's a great time to start thinking about the customer in this, the
Yeah.
customer in this
Absolutely.
industry, and really create pathways that work for them.
Yeah,
You know.
you've hit the nail on the head. We don't ask. I mean, we can probably say that maybe a 5-year-old or 6-year-old might not be able to judge for
Yeah.
himself, but a 10-year-old can, at least what
Yeah.
interests him. A 12-year-old can. What you've pointed out is what they call, or what experts call, democratic education. It exists in some schools across the world. Like, you
Mm.
can count them on your hand. That's it. That they let the child learn what they want to learn. No, they don't say do whatever you want. They say you can pick and choose what you want to learn on a daily basis. You're not locked
Mm.
into studying chemistry for 10 months or a year because you said, okay, in August, I'm going to study chemistry. Now, for the whole year, you got to study that. No, it's like tomorrow you'll make a bike. You want to make a bike, make a bicycle. And then the learning that goes with it. So it's project based. The reason why we call it project based is because it actually becomes more interdisciplinary, but also it also excites the child. So we don't put the learner at the center of our designing the experience. Absolutely not. If we did, we'd be a much different system. We don't ask the child. We tell them this is what you need. And I think it
Mm.
goes on not just for this, it also goes on for university. Universities in higher education, especially abroad, made the biggest the most highlight of the most primary task for a professor is not to teach. It's to have publications and research papers out. So for him, teaching is secondary. He is not judged by his teaching. His salary is based on his publications, his or her publications and stuff like that. And that teaching suffers. Ask university students how will they change education, and they would tell you that. I mean, we're not even asking 22-year-old adults in university. So I mean, like, you're absolutely right. We should be asking.
I have another question for you, Bilal. The lockdown is here
Yeah,
to
yeah,
stay, and we don't know how, we have no idea how long this lockdown is going to
yeah,
be there.
yeah.
And as a parent, you are a parent, I'm a parent,
Mm,
I'm sure hopefully some parents are listening in.
mm,
Um, we are paying this school,
yeah,
and we're paying schools of various like preschools, primary schools, etc., etc. And world over, people are debating whether to keep paying schools.
yeah,
And it's good to hear the other side of the story from the educators sort of angle.
yeah.
Why are schools charging fee? Should they be reducing fee? And I mean, this is not to sort of boycott or go against what governments or
Yeah.
policymakers decide, but just as a matter of debate, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a very it's a very touchy topic that you've raised, because I mean, right now what I see is that I know when I was in school, and I know now the situation in Pakistan and Karachi, there are a lot more education entrepreneurs in the market right now. Yes, we might disagree with how we're doing business, but we all try to improve the system of education, which was a job of the government. Now, these are all private enterprises. Nobody is forced to join them, but every time something happens, we collectively put all the school entrepreneurs who've set up schools into one clan called the school mafia. But mafias are those that are there when you have no choice. It's like the water mafia. There's only one water company or truck company that gives water, but there is so much choice of schools. So what is this mafia about? This in the moment. And I was listening to one historian the other day, is that because problems are so complex, people tend to not want to think about complexities of problem. They want as human beings, we want an easy solution, an easy answer, and have somebody to blame. The easiest thing to say is the schools are mafia, they're stealing money, let's all close them down. But the problem is quite complex. Now, you can not pay the school. Now, what will happen when people don't pay the school fees? Schools are not going to pay teachers out of their pocket. They are going to either fire the teachers, reduce their salaries. Now, these are the same people who might be working at companies and would be offended if those companies that they're working from would reduce their salaries. But they want to not pay the school. The school, by the way, most schools I know do not make more than 10-15% profit. Not even, not even. And most of that profit is always added up to growth. There are many schools, especially the ones that are growing fast, are growing only because they made some profit and they put it to the next school. Nobody is taking money home with them. And if some people are making some money, I'm not denying that people have made money. But if you if you reduce fees right now, what will happen? I mean, people say you're saving up so much money. I did the math for one of the schools actually. The amount of money we are saving is about 200 rupees a child. Then this is for a school that charges in excess of 25,000 rupees a month. So if you're charging 25,000 rupees a month, you're only saving 200 rupees because of the bijli and other kharcha not going on. That's it. 200 rupees per child. That's the saving. Nothing more than that. And what's happened is that most parents are not even paying fees in this time. They're delaying payments. And every school runs on a month-to-month basis. So schools are without cash to pay their employees, but they have to pay teachers. Teachers are also suffering. Teachers have been asked to teach. And yes, if some parents don't agree with the way some teachers are teaching, but the teachers are still teaching the whole class, regardless of one or two kids might not like it that way. So they're being asked to do the work. They're not going to get summer breaks. They're stuck at home like everybody else. They're trying to figure out how to innovate. And even if we can, yes, maybe the whole industry can take a, sorry, not industry, the whole economy can take a collective decision about reducing everybody's salary. That's different. But you can't ask, okay, I'm going to pay the fees because my kid is not going to school. Well, there's a whole economy that works when you pay fees. It's like commitments made to future teachers for next year also. Now, if you don't pay the fees, what's going to happen? The schools, after a couple of months, a lot of them are already shutting down right now. They can't afford to stay open. So what will happen is when the lockdown is over in about a few months time, you want to start looking for schools, you'll realize that, oh, schools or come ho gaye. We have fewer schools left now. Then what will happen is that then the schools who are left have a greater say in what gets done, because there's their choice. How some schools behave, and they are so sought after. So
Yeah.
so we need the government to facilitate more. I mean, if parents feel that schools are making too much money, if everybody actually feels that schools are making so much money, why isn't everybody starting a school then? Like literally, like, I mean, they claim that every housewife can become a school owner. Well, then make them. You can rent a small little place and start a school. If that's the financial logistics of starting a school are very easy, but therefore it also gets shut down faster, because if there's no money, you can't pay. So that's a bigger problem. And then this idea that because my kid isn't going to school, I shouldn't pay. Well, there's something called, like, you pay for the internet even if you don't use it. Like, if you're sleeping in the morning, you're paying for it. You have a fixed monthly connection. You can,
Mm.
some days, if your internet shuts down or you're on vacation, you don't shut it off for 2 weeks. You come back and so it's very hard to, because it's a human service, and don't pay for 1 month, the whole clock starts. I already know 2 schools that have shut down in the last 1 week, because
Really?
they're not getting any money, and they have to fire the teachers. And then when they fire the teachers, they get blamed because the teachers need the salaries, because it's a very vicious
Yeah.
cycle. And I wish that parents would realize that there are people, hardworking people, who are tied into the fee they pay, because otherwise the economy will shut down for the schools. So
Bilal, I think it
yeah.
also possibly stems from the frustration of having to homeschool. It's not
Oh
an easy
yes,
task.
it is not.
People have, their jobs to keep. They have to show that they're being productive from home. They have housework. Many of them don't have
Yeah.
help. There are multiple, obviously, problems. This crisis landed very dramatically on us, and
Yes.
I mean, things just fell wherever they fell, and we have to pick up the pieces and make sense of it. So I do feel for parents who are at least trying to reach out to schools
Yeah.
and say, could you give us a reduction, or could we pay later or something. There is a genuine concern, but I think
Yeah,
what
but you
we're
see the
mostly
problem. I
targeting is the
agree.
perception,
Sorry, I agree that.
that the school is a business,
Hmm.
money making machine. There is that perception, and that's, I
Well, then
think,
I'm
what you're
sorry, but every business running in the economy ka purpose to stay. Every business tries to stay in business. That's the philosophy of business.
of
And to stay
course.
in business, you have to make money. I don't know any business that is not there to make money. But the problem is, I think the perception is the schools are profiteering, like not making profit, but they're profiteering, and a 20% reduction is not too much on their health. I know some. I remember that this happened last time. Schools went from making some profit to actually going in a loss when the last time the government decided to decrease fees by 20%. It doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. Unless, of course, we reduce everybody's salary by at least 35%. It's not even
Mm.
that people have linear math. It's easy to say, यार 20% decrease करेंगे तो आपका profit खत्म हो जाएगा ना बस.
Yeah.
Profit ही कम होगा 25% से. That's not even how the math works. 20% decrease in fees actually goes from being profitable to being a loss-making entity. And I understand that you saying that parents would, I mean, if parents were more engaging with and be less aggressive, then maybe some schools would find a way to be accommodating. And some schools are saying that you can pay later. They know that.
Mm.
But giving waivers of fees while the government is saying that you cannot fire a single employee or that you can have to pay everybody's full salary, that's another problem. In this time,
That's
I think that a lot of countries in the world have reduced employees' salary. How can a government tell the business not to reduce salary? I think my personal solution would be that everybody takes a pay cut and that pay cut is passed on to the parents of teachers. I think that would be a very, very good solution. Like everybody takes a 50% pay cut or a 40% pay cut, and that savings are all passed on to the parents. This is, I'm talking about a school model. And that
mm.
might work, but we're not allowed to do that by the government. So we are
Mm.
stuck. But the perception, I agree with you that that exists. Yeah.
Hmm. So Bilal, what are schools doing? A number of school owners and heads of schools. Are they helping each other out in this time? Are they
Yes.
talking to each other? Are they communicating, sharing,
Yes, there is. There
brainstorm?
are. I'm part of a few WhatsApp groups between different school heads and school owners, and they are help. Everybody's trying to figure out a way to help each other out. Right now, it's not about competition. I think it's just about survival, and I think survival for
Mm.
them, not just for themselves, because you see, school will shut off, and the same school owners can restart a school a year later. They've had equity. They'll set up a new school. It's all about the teachers in the school. You shut down a school, you're gonna there are about 200 to 300 people who work in a decently sized school. They'll all be without a job. So they're also worried about their employees. So what they're doing is they're keeping everybody together. I mean, and also in terms of helping each other out with logistics, with technology, legal aid. So there are some who are on the forefront of getting legal help, so that others can benefit. So as a school body, at least the private association of schools are working together. I know of a few groups. Informally they're talking to each other also, and formally they're collectively also talking to the government as a whole unit also. But I think there's the problem is also the mindset here. So there is communication, but they can be more. The problem we face as a society, because it is something that I've noticed, is that when you look at the internet, we are a big consumer of content. We don't make much content. We don't make much. I mean, like, you'll see a lot of blogs, a lot of shares by people abroad, but not by Pakistanis. Like, hey, I set this up, I'm sharing with you, why don't you? So now I
Mm.
think this time is forcing people to be a little more communicative with what they have. So I know some schools have tested one solution out for technology, are willing to share with others also. Even free tech, they're willing to share with others also. And
Mm.
I've not heard of that before. So I think this crisis has made people be more empathetic with each other, and not fight as much as cooperate. So I see that happening.
That's lovely. That's great.
Yeah.
So we have a question here, Bilal,
Yeah.
which says, how can education be democratized and at scale?
Yeah.
Um, how do you see that question? Would you want to answer it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. See, there's also a difference between education and learning. Now, hum log we categorize education as what happens in a school, and learning. You and I know at this age also we are learning on a quite regular basis. We've got our tools like videos and books, and so the way we are learning right now is through democracy. I think me and you collectively have paid less money learning in the last 5 years than we paid in schools earlier on, because most of it is free. So if learning for our age group can be democratic and easily accessible, democratic education doesn't just mean democratizing education, doesn't just mean making it free. It also making it easily available, even if it's not free. So it's at a very low cost, available anywhere I can. So knowledge is available. But you see, the problem is at different age groups, the solution looks different. In a university, it looks like have Coursera's and the Udacities and the edXs, where you have pre-recorded lectures, just watch them again. because those are less engaging. They're lectures. Then you've got lower classes, and their solution would have to be different. But it'll still go back to first the mindset change being that, is the teacher the is this at the center of learning, or is the student at the center of learning? And that's a huge mindset, that we think, no, no, it's the student, but we really keep it to the teacher does it, so the school does it. So if your student is at the center of learning along with their individual learning plan. So if, for example, if your child, I don't know what, I think grade 5 he is, the elder
Yeah,
one,
now sixth. Yeah,
sixth. So in math, they'll probably be doing maybe fractions or multiple, I don't know, indices, something
yeah,
or the other. Now, the teacher in school can, I mean, there's certain subjects that can be easier delivered through technology. And at that time, I mean, we can choose that also. We can say, you know what, the end discussion work, we'll do it later, but there's some things the teacher doesn't have to teach him. They can be directed video learning, and then follow up integrated automatic solutions and worksheets that check the progress of the child. Like the tool that I know my daughter, her school uses, and at Cedar School we also implemented, called IXL. IXL is independent learning at a very low cost. It costs less than what going to school costs, much less. It's like you can, as an individual, buy the account for I think $8 a month as a parent. That comes out to 1,500 rupees. And that lets your child learn English, math, and sciences through interaction, through learning exercises, through repetition, all at a much lower cost on any Android or Google tablet, laptop. So that's way of demo. I mean, they're making practice available at a lower
mm,
cost. YouTube, Coursera is making content viewable at a low or no cost everywhere. uh, you can also be able to have more access to your teacher. I mean, even that is, democracy in a way, having more access to the powers that be. So you don't have to just be in a classroom for 1 hour and talk to your teacher. I think all schools can do very well by using things like Remind or Google Chat or Slack. And I think some schools do that. And each of these tools serve a purpose, and you can create a hierarchy of these tools for each class, because not every age group appropriate stuff will be available for all the kids. But I think we can definitely democratize it at for a lower for a much higher much easier. And I think a low cost schooling will really benefit from this, because they will realize that salaries of teachers are not at the center of learning, and you can do away with expert teachers, or you can have younger teachers, lower cost teachers come in, because then they become, all they do is curate content from the experts already. We don't need I don't need to learn, for example, how to shoot video with good lighting by somebody I know in my area. I know the best guy right now is on YouTube. I'll go see. So
mm,
now you the best are fewer, and you can learn from them. And so now what I want is somebody who can physically help me, like be there, check up on me. Am I doing that or not? So I think, again,
translate it, facilitate it.
translate,
Yeah.
facilitate, mentor, push, you know be the yeah. So, and that can happen. I mean, because again, at the end of it, we got to realize that we have to reimagine what education is. Because honestly, there's something that I heard at the WISE conference. This is by the Qatar Foundation, every 2 years. And the theme of the conference last time was unlearn to relearn what it means to be human. And what we really do is we make these our kids learn all these things that in the real world they have to unlearn, because they have to
Mm,
relearn new ways of working. Like my wife was agitated the first few weeks. Yaar, my daughter is not studying at home. I'm like, it's okay. She will learn. She'll miss out on a few months of algebra. It's okay. I mean, you and I, when's the last time you used Pythagoras theorem? And this is one example. And people who are proponents of math say this, that you know uh no, but mathematical thinking is a way of thinking that every kid needs to have. And I get that. But when I look at the math and add math syllabi for O levels and A levels, I know I can do 1/5 of that and still teach my kid mathematical thinking. I don't need to teach him relative velocity and logarithms and loci and
mm,
differentiation. And not everybody needs to know that. Yes,
Yeah.
some do who end up wanting to, that have an inner desire. Like for example, if your son has an inner desire to tinker with tools and be an engineer, then he'll know that he'll have to learn calculus. And that's where it comes to democratic education, that the child will then know, I need to learn that, so I'll learn that. But why does everybody else learn that? So
True.
if he and but at the same time, my own initiative, the Alt Academy, is a way of democratizing some form of education. So since I can't change the whole system, and I keep talking about changing the whole system, at least I'm making it easier and cheaper for kids to at least pass the current system, because I think there's too much money being wasted to learn stuff that is irrelevant. And I think we spend too much time and too much money on the wrong form of education. So if I can't change the time because the kids have to go to school, excuse me, at least I can do is make it cheaper, free. It's online. So kids are at least, so that's what's happening online right now. And many teachers are doing that on YouTube, by the way. So that's the scale part that you could do.
Great. Thank you. That addresses a lot of the scale and the democracy. So
Sorry.
Bilal, I have another question for you, which is, um, there's a lot of skill based, there's a lot of focus on skills when, as you
Yeah.
grow older, reach a university, say you're in an art school, you have to learn like 16 skills, be graded on them, etc.
Mhm.
There is a lot of discussion in the world about how skills can actually start at a very, very early age. And you and I often talk about designing the curriculum or the
Yeah.
courses or the education that we ideally want to see, that would lead to a much better university experience, a more conscious, deliberate, career, life,
Mhm.
use of your time also, given how many tools children now have to learn from. So it's a matter of picking up a skill that you gravitate towards, regardless of what school you're enrolled in or what
Yeah.
university you're enrolled in. So my question being, how can schools create a more skill based, and should they create it, because, or do they just leave it for universities?
So you've put the question very well, I think. And the reason why this question is pertinent is because these skills are the skills that are employable, the skills that you talk about. I mean, a lot of knowledge is there for to open our minds, and I understand that we need some form of knowledge to be able to access information. But there is an over reliance on knowledge at schooling level and less reliance on learning skills. And I mean there are very hard skills one can learn, skills of, for example, writing and communication, skills of sketching, drawing, the graphic design, understanding UI and UX, for example. These are skills that are usable in most areas of life. And I think employers now ask for these, and that's why universities, which are the closest to employers, know that the employers are asking for this. So for their children to have better employability, their students, sorry, they force these, or they encourage the students to have these skills. And that's where the schools can catch up, because the universities would need these skills for their employers, so, or for the children's students employers. So we need this, we absolutely do. And schools shouldn't be integrating more skills in the curriculum and have less time for this knowledge based curriculum that we are just hell bent upon learning. I mean, be it the A levels, O levels curriculum, be it the Aga Khan board, be it the Sindh federal board or Punjab board, everybody has just, is just too much content to learn for no reason whatsoever. Where they say, for people who promote these curriculums, say that no, no, but there is integrated learning of understanding and different learning skills and adaptability and critical thinking and problem solving. But I think just by saying that, they absolve themselves of the skill of the need of teaching this to the kids. I think that if we are deliberate on a daily basis in our lesson plans and weekly basis, ke, which skills are we developing, and we highlight that, we tell the children also this, but be it through a curriculum that's O levels, A level, whatever curriculum, or even classes outside the traditional curriculum, it will benefit the children a lot. Because honestly, we've seen the acceleration of knowledge sharing happening. We can, I mean, right now, without going to college, without taking a single course, I can learn about font theory and, you know, that kind of stuff. I can
Yeah.
just take a course online. I don't need to know, and I don't need to have studied this in school.
Mm.
But things like how to express myself, if that, in whatever language we choose to, is a very important skill. I mean, you got the, as Tony Wagner says, the 7 survival skills. You got agility, adaptability, problem solving, critical thinking, creative thinking. Creativity is a skill also. It's a skill of matching whatever you learn to make something new, but we don't teach that explicitly. We should be teaching these things explicitly. And I think when we start saying that we are teaching it, we will be called out about our inadequacies of not having taught this. So I think that parents should be parents. If they want to cause a change to happen, let's not start arguing about the fees. Let's talk about what is being taught to their kids, because that's where the fight is. It's not that what the schools are charging. It's that what is being taught to my kid is does my kid really need 11 years of math? Like, really? Like, no, I don't think so. Does my child need to know? Yes. I mean, I know so many kids who go through school do not know there was a Cold War. They actually think the Cold War was an actual war. Think about that. And that's the defining event, or not event, generation before us was the Cold War, the whole world politics. So understanding that and putting that in context is more important than, the things that we do. So that's just one example. But we should even teach our kids how to imagine and be curious. Even curiosity is a skill to be taught. Like, if something triggers you, how can you be more curious about this? Like, helping us to look further and past the first link that we see, or the first few. So I think that, and if we can focus more on these skills, that's how we fix education. I really think so. Because if parents want more of this, then educators will have to change what they need to sell, and then things will actually start changing. It's skill-based learning
Yeah.
that's needed, soft and hard skills. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when we were little, Bilal, and we had, I remember I hated history, and I would always ask, why do I need to learn this up to prove what? You know,
When's the
if
last?
it's there,
Can I ask you something about that history thing for a second?
yeah,
You remember any period movie that you've seen last?
1917,
How was your impression about that movie?
I enjoyed it
So, but that's how
quite a bit.
history. That's my point.
Yeah,
It's so the subject matter at times is not the problem. It's how we deliver it, how we engage the child with
absolutely.
that subject matter. I think that's where our
Absolutely. So,
fault
so
is.
which is
Mm,
so the agenda or the purpose that we were told as students was,
mm,
that you have to know every single thing in this. So if you get a date wrong, you
yeah,
get a mark minus. But if you make an intelligent connection, you connect dots while you're
yeah,
writing an answer, or you draw a very good parallel, you don't get an extra point for it unless you are going to
yeah,
a very good school. So I think that the right, like you're saying, the way, the what you do with the knowledge,
yeah,
that's actually interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
So just one last question before we wrap up,
Sure.
even though this has been phenomenal conversation. Uh,
Yeah.
if you were given a magic wand and you could make a school of the future, just happen, what would that school be like? And this is it's up to you to choose what age group you're making it for.
Yeah. See, hmm, it's yeah, because the school has so many different age groups involved. Even within the secondary school, but it's definitely uh, first I'd have max. If the country has forced me to take some curriculum, standardized curriculum, I'd not spend more than 40-30% of my time doing that. And the rest of the time with the children would be based on project based learning, going out in the field. And by the way, I mean, I'll start off with the whole calendar school year. Why does this have to be this 10-month and 2-month off and 10-month? And I think kids get bored. You need change. I think everybody can do well with 8 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 10 weeks off, on 2 weeks off, 10 weeks, 2 weeks, 10 weeks. I mean, I'll change that. And then start thinking, learning in chunks of 10 weeks instead of 1 year. Because 1 year thinking is too long, and it's very daunting to think, what can I achieve in 1 year? But 10 weeks is a small time. And you can have 10-week projects. You can have 10-week learnings. I mean, you can explore something for 10 weeks and not be committed to for a whole year. Our commitments to learning have to be for a whole year. And that's Sometimes like you can experiment with that. The most
So
important thing I want to
correct
do
me
is
if I'm wrong, but you
experiment.
did experiment, right? You did experiment with this
No, no, no.
recently.
We did no recently. No, no, no. See, experimentation. See, because now you have 10 weeks and 2 weeks, then you tie in that in that 10 weeks the kid can take anything he wants, anywhere, try any subject you want, try, and the subjects don't have to be outlined at a very massive level. Try, okay, let's say how to make a leather purse, could be a 10-week course. Take it
Okay.
up. Designing, tanning the leather, cutting the leather, sewing the leather, outsourcing the hide. So sustainable business aa gaya, so you don't take the hide of special animals. So the whole business of leather, along with the creative arts and all. You can actually learn a good amount in 10 weeks, and then you focus, and you don't study 8 subjects a day. You focus on like three courses in 3 or 4 courses in that 10-week period, so you don't get bored, but not more than 3 4, otherwise you get distracted. No, we didn't. We tried a bit of it, and we will work with that in a school. Is that kids come to school for 10 weeks and then take a break. That's just to give them a better break system. It doesn't change what they're learning. They're still learning Cambridge, economics, accounting, physics, chemistry. I teach chemistry, and it hasn't changed much for the last 20 years. And most of these kids will not need it. Yes, some will, who become doctors,
Hmm.
and even they don't need too much chemistry. For them, the first 3 months of AS chemistry is over the 2 year period is more than enough. And we just keep drilling more and more data, where I want to know, can I judge for his intellect, passion, and thinking ability? That's all I need to know what a child can do. And then I interest him with different things, like so I would not base a subject matter expert. I do not need somebody to teach something or study something for 4 years to become a subject matter expert. You could do it for 3 months, 10 weeks, 20 weeks, whatever. Be variable in that, and let the kids experiment. Experimentation has to be at the heart of it, because that's what life is. It's experimentation. We have to build in failure. We don't let the kids fail. Like, honestly, we just scare the hell out of them for never failing. Like, I can't fail. I can't. Why can't you fail? Hey, it's okay to fail. I'd rather the kids fail every day in school than fail in life baad mein. Because that's what happens. I've seen so many people, so many kids, my friends, aced school, failed in life. So
Very true.
so
Very
so
true.
experimentation and failure built in the system, and mentorship built in the system. The teachers have to be friends, not friends, like how parents supposed to be. They have to be parental, at the same time elder brotherly, sisterly, like both. That relationship has to be at the center of it, because you will not remember, when you as a child, you might not remember what you've learned in a class, but you'll remember relationships from school. That teacher, she looked out for me, or he looked out for me. I want that. And that's what's needed. We are human beings, we want that. Google can't give us that. Google or any other internet can't give us that. Oh, they care. There's no website cares about me, but people do. And that caring drives learning. If somebody knows they care about me, I will do this for them. Same thing with teachers. If kids were known that teachers really care about them, then they would. So, like, recenter and the whole education around a few principles like experimentation, failure, love, connection, uh, mentorship, and then figure out what to teach them, because that'll change. The problem is we don't think that what to be taught can be changed. It is absolutely the one thing that can always change. But what cannot ever change is that the need for these kids to be loved, cared for, respected, like adults, given chances to do whatever they want, fail, learn from their failure, help each other out. There is no collective work. Life is like a race in these schools, in every single school. There is no, I mean, unless you go to university, there's never even a group project where you get grades that are common to the whole group. Like, you've never, and you suddenly realize that my life is not just based on me, it's based on somebody else not doing the work. But that reality never hits you all of your 18 years till you get to college
That's
or
true.
the work. So we're not
And it
teaching
also
them life.
doesn't doesn't feed into your image of yourself either. So if you're
Yeah,
very good at group work, or if you're very good at taking a team together and doing, leading a team towards an objective, you may never even find out, and always
yeah,
hate yourself for doing badly at a subject, right?
yeah. And who
I
cares
mean,
about these subjects in the workplace? But
yeah,
if you're a good leader, you're a good team player. That is so important. You're the
that's
gel that keeps the
absolutely.
group together. There's no there's no marks for that in school, but life is exactly about that. Who takes that who's the nucleus, you know?
That's
So
very true.
yeah,
And also, and they leave that for extracurricular activities, I think, or maybe
yeah.
like team sport, and that's that you never get that kind of credit. I would like to also add, Bilal, maybe you can share with the world
Mhm.
the development on the report card that you did recently at Cedar School.
Yeah,
Would
I
you like
was
to share?
that was
Because
fun though. So
that's
we
quite in
we
connection with what we're talking
yeah.
about, right?
So yeah, so we tried to do some crazy things at the Cedar School. Like one of the things was that in the next year and starting now, I mean, once you go back, kids will be on campus for 10 weeks or for 2 weeks, 10 weeks. We don't have a 3 month summer break. We have a 5 week summer break. And we take the other weeks and divide over the whole year. And that's one. Second, a report card that you just mentioned. The idea was that we are just sick and tired of looking at report cards that only talk about grades. And this idea came from looking at report cards that some IB schools and even the Ivy school is doing for their first graders and like preschoolers. There is no subject grade, so they talk about the personality. Can a child, can he, how well he does in group work or something else. So what we started doing was that we started humanizing the report card. So there are some grades somewhere and we want to move them to the back or the end or somewhere, hide them in the report card because they're not everything. But there are other things about the child's characteristics, getting along with others, how does he respond to setbacks, and making that a little more. So getting the teachers involved in making much more humanistic and more connected comments about that. So there are about 4 or 5 pages of the report card that are talking about everything else about the child and not just his grades. And the more and that is a signaling. See, you need to understand that if you give that much space to such content, you're signaling to the parents that this is actually what we cared about and this is what you should
Very.
care about too. And so
Mm.
it all comes from signaling. I mean, if you want to make change, it is absolutely possible to make change. It's just that somebody has to take the first step, and it's possible. And and this is how we human beings are so impressionable. We see one ad and we go buy something. I mean, we can easily make, if you make the right sense, people will change. And I think the steps can be taken. And I think that the only governments can't do that. The problem is that these experimental things can only happen at private enterprises, entrepreneurial ventures. It can't happen at government level. Government level will take what's safe and take it forward. So it's up to us, the random private schools, to experiment, see what that works, then push the government, see this works, how about you guys try that. And that's how we can probably have a much larger chain across the country.
And it's not like a luxury. I think it's almost a responsibility at this stage of the private schools and the people who are exposed to such knowledge and research and best practices. You've got to do it. You can't
Yeah,
not do it. You have to do it. It's mandatory almost.
yeah.
And it reminds me of that quote there was about if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Remember there was a
Yes.
quote about that. Yeah, so it's almost that. And I think it's amazing how there are people like you who are believing so strongly, and so
Mm,
you're so dedicatedly working towards it. And I think if we just have more of those, we'll start to see some impact
yeah.
somewhere, and maybe where it counts actually. So
And the
and may
reason
these
why
dreams
I'm
go on.
sorry, sorry, continue. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
no, please go
Yeah, I
on.
was just saying that just something that when you said there's something just triggered that quote in my head. The Nelson Mandela quote. The reason why I'm so passionate about education, I think education is not just for the school. It's learning. It's everywhere. I think the reason, I mean, when Mandela said that education is the most powerful tool, weapon you can use to change the world. And that's what I really believe, that you can use education to change the world. I think that's where we headed. So I'm hoping to do
That's
some
like,
of that.
that's mic drop.
Sorry. All right. That's mic drop. All right. I think
Bilal,
we'll
that
end
was
there then.
great. I'm so happy that after all the thousands of conversations we've had off camera, we had this one on camera.
I know
Thank
this
you
is the
so much.
first one, by the way, recorded conversation.
Yes,
Years
yes.
coming, by
And
the
we're
way,
not in the
years.
same room.
Yeah, well,
Thank you so much, Bilal. This
yeah,
was amazing.
this
Yeah, I've
was.
been
Thank
in a
you.
Zoom room. We're not in a real room, but
I know.
this was
But
great.
it felt the same,
And
felt the
we'll have
same.
more of these as we go. Uh,
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
all right. Bye bye.
Okay.
Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much.